All right, good afternoon, I guess. Sorry, my day has been kind of crazy today. So welcome everybody to our 9th session of the 4-H orientations. I am recording, so just so everybody knows. If you haven't had a chance, it looks like almost everybody has, but if you haven't had a chance, if you could please share your name and county in the chat box, I would appreciate it. That way, that just gives me a record, and I don't have time right now to write down who all is participating, but I would sure appreciate it. So we're going to, today is an interesting, kind of as we start planning our spring and summer, we really tend to do a lot of programs during that time. And so I wanted to share with everybody a couple of different topics. So one of them, but they do go kind of hand in hand. One of them is, how do we identify what is quality 4-H curriculum? I know that we have a lot of people, a lot of our staff out there are out looking for materials to use for kids, both just activities as well as actual curriculum to use with projects. And so I'm going to share with you, how do you evaluate a piece of curriculum? Or I mean a curriculum, or even you can use the same thing for an activity. And then also, then we're going to talk about creating a positive learning environment, more of how do we go about creating a lesson plan. And, you know, when I first started in this, you know, I have a degree in education, had a teaching certificate, and what I found was when I first started, I tried to do lesson plans every time I taught, and I'll share with you why it's important. You know, as you continue along, you don't necessarily have to do a lesson plan every time. Now, I don't necessarily write down my sorry, I just dropped something. I don't necessarily write down my lesson plans, but I think about them in my head and think about how to write a learning objective. And so we're going to be actually doing some practicing of learning objectives. So, for those of you that are just joining us, if you haven't had a chance, in the chat box, if you can type in your name and your county, so I have that record of who's on, I would sure appreciate it. So I'm going to share. We're going to start with talking about the quality curriculum. So what is a quality 4-H curriculum? And just to kind of start you out, so if you look at how National 4-H Council or National 4-H Headquarters defines quality curriculum, it is a sum of all intentional learning experiences. That curriculum includes activities, events, workshops, trainings, field trips, and it also involves, you know, all the different components. So it could be a club activity, it could be school enrichment, special interest camps, after school. It can also include both print and online materials that are intentional for both the youth and adults. And so that is really where we are looking at, you know, how we're looking at it. The other piece, you know, when we think about our 4-H curriculum, this is for our projects as well as our camps and maybe our school programs or our after-school programs. You know, when we create something, we're creating a curriculum, we're creating a series of activities. That's really the foundation of the 4-H program. It's our bricks and mortar of how we frame and build our programs around. It's also, you know, and when we think about it, so our outputs are things like our meetings, events, workshops, trainings, field trips. Those can be taught by both volunteers and by staff. Those activities, you know, can be clubs, school enrichment, like I said. And then we also have a lot of technology activities as well. So the other piece, and I know this is really small writing, but I wanted to really talk about why it's important, especially as we're moving forward with all of our curriculum, etc., you know, really moving forward with our 4-H program, why it's so important when I say that what is being used by our volunteers and our staff really needs to be research-based. Why is that important? Well, you know, the criteria by which our materials are evaluated on, they align, there are standards. National 4-H headquarters have come up with standards that really one needs to look at when both creating curriculum and evaluating curriculum. That just ensures that it is you know, inquiry-based, it's recognition. You can see Lynn Schmidt-McQuitty out of California gave this quote: "The extension of knowledge is a critical component of cooperative extension model and developing best practices around effective training methodologies and professional development." Well, part of that is it's a matter of integrity. You know, we want to make sure that we are using the highest quality materials for our programming efforts. The information that we share with our clientele need to really contain these following elements. You know, we really have to, it's critical for the integrity of our program. There's a validity involved. You know, what is the worthiness of the content, and you know, what we're looking at for our standards today may be different 10 years down the road. That's one of the reasons why we need to evaluate curriculum on a regular basis. A lot of states have been going to about a 5-year rotation of looking at curriculum. So they're constantly looking at curriculum, but maybe they evaluate the animal science curriculum 1 year, and then the next year they evaluate another set of curriculum. Just you know, it's looking at what we do, the significance. You know, how is this? How is the content relevant to the greater body of knowledge? The interest, is it gonna hold and attract and hold the learner's attention? The utility, how useful is this material? You know, you can see all of those pieces. I think that's really important. You know, and part of our job is and part of why we have been around for 100+ years is because we have been dedicated to learning and understanding how our programs help young people become responsible citizens. And the only way that we can do that, honestly, is through research. I mean, we know, because of the research that's been done in the last 10 years, that 4-H helps our young people excel beyond their peers, that 4-H makes 4-Hers tend to make healthier choices, and that 4-H science programs do help those students excel beyond the classroom. And so really, as we are moving forward, you know, Nevada 4-H is contributing to that research, and you know, that's how we are poised to move into the future. And so that's how we can, that research and using this research-based materials is how we can continue that legacy of being a gold standard of quality youth development programming. I know, you know, one of the things that I look at as a parent when, you know, I'm looking at what is the materials that you're using, where are you getting your information? You know, if somebody's just making something up, I'm probably not going to have my child participate in that, because I want to make sure that it does have a base and a good quality. So what is it that we're looking for? So here's a framework that's been created. This is kind of a philosophical framework that's been created. I'm actually going to give you a checklist of things, but some philosophical things. So one is the support and the advancement of the mission mandates through some foundational, critical, and emerging issues. You know, as we know, 4-H science, which includes engineering, technology, and applied math, is critical. The Healthy Living and Citizenship also provide that content framework for our curriculum. You know, when we look at these, provide for a strong development of subject matter knowledge, and then also gives a high competency and demonstratable skills. We're able to evaluate some of those skills that the kids are learning. The content is framed around the essential elements, inclusivity, and life skills. I know in the past I've talked to, you know, I've had sessions on what are the 4-H essential elements. That is, you know, that is really the basis. Does anybody remember what those 4-H essential elements are? If you do, type them in the chat box. I'll give you one hint, the big M. Okay, there's STEM from what 4-H is, yep. Do you know what they actually are, though? Mastery is one, yep. Belonging. Anybody know what the independence? Great. And there is a G, generosity. Good job. Okay, so remember, if you can't remember them, remember the big M, belonging, independence, generosity, and mastery. So those are, you know, and everything we do should be based around those four. Inclusivity is another one, you know, making sure that we that our programs are open to everybody, that we are providing those opportunities, and that we, you know, we make everybody feel welcome. And then the targeting, and that's what I talked about the last session, was that inclusivity. What do we need to do for that? And then the last one is the life skills. And again, you know, talking about that targeting life skills model, you know, how do we teach young people skills that they need to become productive, capable adults? The learning experiences are developmentally appropriate. You know, human and positive youth development theories and research shape our intentional learning experiences relevant to age. They really, you know, when we look at a curriculum or we look at materials or activities, are they cognizant of that physical, that emotional, social, and mental development? That's one of the reasons why Clover Buds, you know, we are so particular about what Clover Buds should and shouldn't do. And I just had this conversation with the county in the last couple of days about appropriateness of Clover Bud activities. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why Clover Buds have a separate set of guidelines, that they are not supposed to participate the same as a 4-H member. The content has scope and sequence. There's objectives and standards, and then it's research-based. You know, when we look at that, it's based on, the curriculum should be based on the experiential learning model. They're doing, they're reflecting, and they're applying. They should have, young people should have those opportunities to experience and explore, to share and process, to generalize, and then apply that knowledge. It really is a process-based, upon educational standards, or kind of that learning design from start to finish. It's not just a hit and miss. High quality with a comprehensive development process. So has the curriculum been peer reviewed? That's one of the things when you go on the national 4-H, if you go on 4h.org and look under curriculum, they will give you, there's a long list of curriculum from around the country that has been peer reviewed, has gone through a process of through that development. And I think that that is really important. While, you know, you can find some great activities on Pinterest and some of those, we really would like to direct people first to find those peer-reviewed activities, because we know that they've been proven, and that they have had that proven, that evaluation, and to go through a peer review process, you have to do an evaluation of those materials to make sure that they are that they do work and that they are appropriate. And so that's how you find that evidence-based. The individual and group learning are valued. Both youth and adults are learners, and so, you know, we know that learning is lifelong. You know, I'm constantly learning, and so part of what we want our 4-H curriculum to do is that both our youth and adults are actively engaged in that learning process. You know, every time I go to teach something, even, you know, this session today. So this is actually one I will let you know that I have not taught before. It's something I've done a lot of looking at and doing, but I had never put together the presentation before. And so honestly, you know, as I was pulling this together, I've learned a lot through getting ready to present this topic. And so, you know, it's, as an adult, I'm still learning. So I think that that's really important as we're working with our 4-H volunteers. You know, they're not going to know everything. Let's go ahead and teach them. you know, or they can learn right along with the kids. My goal is to try to stay one step ahead of my audience. And so, you know, but sometimes that may not happen. But then there's a scientific approach to learning, engagement, and change. So that, you know, that you look at that inquiry-based model that's nested, or it's, you know, kind of involved in that experiential learning. If you're not familiar with the inquiry-based learning, take some time and look that up. It's a more of a science-based approach, but it is very embedded in what we do in 4-H. Basically, it's giving everybody the opportunity to experience something and then figure out, you know, was that the correct way? But, you know, following that, it gives our young people that chance to explore opportunities in experimentation, investigation, questioning, and then argument. Are there any questions on this framework? And I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of handouts today. You're going to be getting all of those handouts, or a lot of handouts from me again, that have all of this information. Okay. And just for those of you that have just joined us, if you can take a second and in the chat box, please put your name and your county in that chat box so I can keep track. And thank you, Tricia. You know, I love the fact that you are, you know, that so supportive of the research-based curriculum. I know that, yeah, it is. So if those of you that aren't familiar, Tricia in Clark County has put together a really nice set of materials to take to teachers or take to school districts to train their staff about STEM activities. And so it is our programs, that's part of the reason why it is easier to get into some of the schools, because 4-H has a good reputation of using research-based curriculum. It's activities that you know, it's curriculum that teachers, they know they're going to hit their educational standards. So thank you, Tricia, for that plug. So how do we find this? So, oh, fantastic. I'm going to stop sharing this document, and I'm going to share another document with you. I just have to find it first. Oh, of course, it's in a different file. And I am going to share this. It is designed right now for California. I will do what I can do to try to get it so it is designed for Nevada, because I personally think it is a really good piece to share. Let's see. I'm going to stop that. Sorry, it takes me just a second to do this. So this is a piece that California has put together, and this would be one that you could use in your county as you're out looking for materials. You can ask these questions. I just wanted to share with you what it looked like. I have used something very similar in other states that I've worked in. You know, when I've been on statewide curriculum review committees, pretty much every state I've ever worked in, I've been on some kind of statewide curriculum review. So this is why, you know, so this one, it won't take much to change this to match or to be for Nevada, but I just wanted to share with you. And I'm going to send this one to you right now. But okay, now I'm going to go back. Yeah, and I will, thank you. Let's see, okay. It is, let's see. I think, okay. So, you can see, okay, so the first question you asked, does the 4-H project activity relate to youth development, educational objectives, or goals? So as we are, as we are looking at the is we're looking at, you know, kind of that whole looking at youth development as a process. We need to think about, you know, those topics, things like positive youth development, all of those different items. And I think that we need to, you know, looking, is that the goal? Number two is, does it focus on one of our core 4-H content areas, SET or STEM? It depends on, and I've asked this question to my colleagues around the country, and it honestly depends on where you live, or where you live, on what it's called. In, you know, SET, STEM, STEAM, you may have heard it as STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So, or it may be called 4-H science. So it just depends. But we want it to be some kind of science, healthy living, citizenship, and leadership. So citizenship and leadership kind of fall under the same mission mandate, but, you know, is it focused around that? You know, I have had a lot of requests over the years for curriculum. You know, like, we have people that want to do a yak project. Well, we can fit it into one of these categories, and, you know, and honestly, I can tell you out there and around the country, there is not a yak project available. I even checked Alaska. But they do have a reindeer project, but not a yak project. So, you know, sometimes you have to say, well, it doesn't really fit in our area. But, you know, there's other things that we can look at. So, but we want to make sure that it fits under that. Now, you know, as anything, pretty much we can make any 4-H curriculum fit under one of these three categories. You know, we just want to really look at what that is. Part of the reason that we like it to fit under one of these three categories is as we are looking at doing more and more research around what the impact of 4-H, because we're being asked more than ever before, what is the impact of 4-H? Why should the federal government or the state government continue to fund this program? We are one of the only, you know, positive youth development programs that is still funded by, you know, by appropriated dollars. And so, you know, we really need to, we have to show what the impact is. And we can do that, common measures. So, you know, you've heard me talk a little bit about the 4-H common measures as one way that we can measure our impact. Well, they have already created our outcome or our indicators for SET, healthy living, citizenship. So it's a great, you know, we're able to show that impact at a national level, as well as a state and a county level. Okay, so does curriculum materials contain accurate information? Do you know how many times I have looked at materials that have been created by a volunteer or by a county or even by some states that do not contain accurate information, especially when you are talking about animal science? That's one of the big pieces, you know, we want to make sure, or food preservation, making sure that everybody is using the most current, most up-to-date standards that are out there. You know, there's actually some risk management involved in that. Oops, I went too far. But we need to make sure, and that's part of why we review curriculum on a regular basis. You know, what was the standard? Even looking at our foods and nutrition curriculum, how many of us are still using curriculum that have the food guide pyramid in it, and that it doesn't have the my plate that is now the standard from USDA for youth nutrition. You know, food guide pyramid was great. I actually have still seen some curriculum out there that has the 4 basic food groups. And so those are the types of things. Now, granted, I know my plate, it's been around long enough now that it should be incorporated into most of our 4-H foods curriculum, but there may be some out there that still, you know, not quite, but There might be some still out there with the food guide pyramid, but that's something we need to be looking at. Does it have the most up-to-date materials or the most up-to-date guidelines? Is it sufficient enough to hold the participants' attention? Now, as I looked at this, I did find out that people now, this was really funny, and I'll share this in the next section too, but a person's attention span now is 8 seconds. That has decreased from the year 2000 where it was 12 seconds. And so, as we're looking at curriculum, we need to make sure it's going to hold the attention of the young person. Are the activities, and this is part of age appropriateness as we move into number 5, is it developmentally or age appropriate? If the curriculum is too easy for a person, it's not going to hold their attention. If it's too difficult, it's not going to hold their attention. So you really have to, now granted, every child's going to be a little bit different, but you got to take it as a whole. Is the project or activity free of bias? Part of that is looking at the pictures that are included in those materials. Are there pictures of diverse audiences, diverse youth, both racially, disability-wise, gender-wise? Is the language free of bias? Those are, and as we look at some of the older 4-H curriculum that's out there, you're not going to find a diverse audience. And so that's really important. As young people go, and I've heard this time and time and time again, and I've seen it, where young people will pick up a curriculum and they're going to look at it and go, this doesn't relate to me. There's no pictures of kids like me in this curriculum. And they don't want to participate. And so that's what's really important. We also want to make sure that curriculum does have, that there's some kind of diversity or some kind of inclusion included in that. We all know that those learning experiences that involve inclusion really they provide a great learning tool and a great learning environment. So and it helps our young people as they move forward into adulthood to become better equipped to function effectively with that. So and our we all know that our world is changing. It's becoming more and more diverse, and so we've got to be able to prepare our young people to move into that. Are the 4-H youth development practices incorporated? Things like safety, relationship building, youth engagement, community involvement, and skill building. So really thinking about some of those pieces, looking at it from a risk management standpoint. We really need to think about some of those elements. Our 4-H teaching methods incorporated things like the experiential learning, inquiry-based learning, collaborative learning, and service learning. We need to really make sure that they are solid in, if nothing else, experiential learning. That is critical. If it's a book, like a curriculum book, then it needs to make sure that they have that opportunity in every single activity. If it's just a single lesson plan, then you need to make sure that lesson plan incorporates all of the experiential learning. But there should be times that groups, maybe they work individually and maybe they work in groups, a whole variety of things. The other piece that we need to look at is learning styles. Does it reach all learning styles? Is it strictly lecture? Is it strictly hands-on? I don't know how much everybody knows about learning styles. I've actually got a really good, I know you guys have all got, but there's a fact sheet from National 4-H Council on learning styles. It's pretty basic, but essentially, everybody has a preferred learning style. Could be visual, it could be auditory, or it could be kinesthetic or tactile. They've lumped those two together. There is a difference there, but we're not going to go into that. That was what I did a lot in my master's program. That was my focus, was learning styles and teaching styles. So I could go off on a whole tangent on that, but I'm not going to. But we need to make sure that our curriculum does reach and that it's incorporating all three of those learning styles. So, you know, if a person is a visual learner, then they're going to rely mostly on their sight to be able to see that. They prefer to have things written down. They like to look at pictures, charts, graphs, those types of things. They you know, like I said, they do best by seeing it written down. They like handouts that give directions that they can look at. Auditory learners are ones that they like to hear things. They do best by listening. So they prefer demonstrations, videos, they like lecture discussions, and then reading out loud. And so you have to, for that audience, you need to make sure that you're giving those directions or you're saying things out loud to them. And then you have your kinesthetic and tactile learners, which are, they learn best by touching, feeling, experimenting with what they're trying to learn. So those are the types of individuals that you hand them, you know, a little notepad and a pen, and you say, okay, draw a monkey. And they're going to draw a monkey. The visual learners, you're going to give them an instruction sheet that tells them, take the notepad, take the pencil, I want you to draw a four-legged monkey facing to the right. And then with the auditory learners, you're going to be telling them how to, you know, you're going to be giving them those instructions. The kinesthetic learners like role-playing, they like experiments, simulations. They also, you know, examples for this group, they like to build a bird feeder, learning about animal diseases. So what they might do there is actually start, if they're learning about animal diseases, they may want to do some experimentation. And so, you know, like we said, and learning styles are something that can change, but for the most part, people have a preferred learning style. Extended learning opportunities are available for participants. So do they have a chance for that? Part of the reason that we have demonstrations and we have record books and we do additional conferences and those types of things is that's all part of the curriculum. That's all part of the learning process. So do they have the opportunity for public speaking or to give a demonstration? Do they have that opportunity for record keeping? You know, as I think about our camps, you know, thinking about the camp curriculum that you're putting together, one thing that some campers might really like is journals, keeping a journal every day, you know, and that's a record keeping of their camp experience, but it gives them that opportunity to, you know, and maybe that's not a requirement, but maybe that's, you know, an option for a young person. And then is it clear what participants are to learn and do? You know, sometimes when we get in, if we don't make it an intentional thinking about it, then we don't, it's not clear what they're supposed to be learning. I've been in sessions like that, and boy, they're not fun. Have the learner outcomes been identified in the lesson plans, in each lesson plan? So there might be a curriculum, and then there's a series of lessons. Each lesson plan should have learner objectives that have been outlined. And I think, you know, so it might be, so the first week they're learning about the breeds of rabbit. So the learner objective would be, youth, at the end of this, youth will be able to identify 5 breeds of rabbit. And so, but you want to make sure that that's in there, because that helps you and the volunteer as the instructors to know what it is at the end of the session, and that gives you a tool to be able to evaluate. You can teach the young person. You can make sure, go around, okay, give me 5 breeds, or have everybody write down 5 breeds or whatever. Are the proper safety practices emphasized? So most people know that risk management is something that I stress a lot, and that's always going to be in there. Is there a mechanism for evaluating process? Again, that kind of goes back to those learner outcomes. Can you evaluate? A lot of curriculum out there actually has an evaluation. It might have a short evaluation. It might, or is there a way that you can do an observational evaluation? But is it there? Is a project or activity aligned with positive youth development frameworks? Are you teaching developmental assets? Are young people gaining some of those assets that we have shown to be so important? Are they building risk and resiliency skills? And does it adhere to the UNCE 4-H youth development policies, mission, and our core values? Like I said, those are things to be, as we're looking at curriculum, those are things that are really important to look at yourself, or to look at. Now, granted, some may not have everything. We all know what the key components are, but if everybody does have that, if you take this checklist and you have a curriculum that that reaches all 15 of these, and that that's going to be a quality curriculum. If you have one that meets 10 of the 15, then I would probably start questioning that and looking at what it is that makes it so it's not necessarily a quality curriculum. And the last slide is, essentially we need to remember, as we are out looking for materials, and I do this when I look, I've gotten a lot of phone calls, hey, I'm looking for curriculum in teen leadership. And so I will go out and do a search. Now, granted, I know that if I find it on the National 4-H website, I know it's more than likely been peer reviewed. It doesn't go up there unless it's been peer reviewed, either by the state or by a national committee. I'm gonna say yes, but sometimes I'll go out and look at other organizations or even a state list, and not all state curriculum have been peer reviewed. And so I take this list, I go through it and try to meet those qualifications before I let hey, this is a good piece. But our 4-H curriculum is the key to the 4-H Positive Youth Development Program. When we look at it, like I said before, National 4-H Headquarters defines a curriculum as a sum of the total of all the intentional learning experiences. Whether we're looking for curriculum or an activity, we need to make sure that it is a solid and is rooted in what 4-H is best known for. We are what we are, and we have been around for so long because people know that they can count on us to have quality materials, that their kids are learning the most up-to-date skills that they can learn. That's part of the reason why I've been so cranky, I guess. I don't know hopefully it hasn't come across too cranky, but about the importance of using curriculum, 4-H curriculum, in our projects. And so that's part of the reason why we're really taking the time to do that. One of the goals that I'm trying to get done, and probably within the next year, is for every project I'd like to have a list of suggested curriculum. Many states, that's what they've got. It helps with our volunteers, it helps our staff. It just takes a little bit of time to pull that together, and that's what I've been working on with the survey that we did around when I asked the really long survey that I did for 4-H Online, or the projects. That's part of the reason why I need to see what's being used out there by our state, making sure that that is quality, and then we will pull that list together. So that's, like I said, it's not going to be something that can be done overnight, but it's something that I'm continuing to work on. Erica and I just met a couple days, well, last week, I guess, late last week, and talked about some of the materials, and she shared with me some materials that we can use. So any questions about that section? Hopefully this will help as you're going out and looking at curriculum, looking at materials, to give you an idea of what is, how do you tell if it's a quality piece or not? Okay. I don't see any questions. For those of you that have just kind of joined in, yes, and Trisha, you'll get the PowerPoint, you're going to get all the handouts, everything. In fact, when I'm done today, I realize I had not sent out session 8 yet. So I'm going to get session 9 converted. I'll get everything in Dropbox, and I'll send out session 8 and session 9, as well as the last 4-H online Q&A. If it's 4-H curriculum, it's quality. Typically that is, if it's national 4-H, if it comes from the national 4-H website, then that pretty well assures that it's been through a system. If you find it on a state website, I would take it through this question, this survey. Sometimes you'll find curriculum on a county website. I know when I was in Idaho, in the county, when I first started my career, we had quite a few pieces that were county-based curriculum. Maybe our FCS educator had created, I know one that we had was cake decorating. There was not a statewide curriculum on cake decorating. I'm not even sure. In fact, that's one I have on my list to go out and try to find, because we don't have anything right now that's consistently being used across the state in that project, but it's a big project. So if I find it on a county website, I'm going to take it through this 15-step, this 15-question checklist, and make sure that it fits all of those categories. Food preservation was another one. Until about 2-3 years ago, it was really more of county-based curriculum. There wasn't really anything out there nationally. There is a few things, Dutch oven cooking. There's some of those things that are that we're looking at. But if you find it on the National 4-H website, then just go for it. I can almost guarantee that it's quality. All right, and pretty soon, honestly, it's going to become second nature to you. As you're looking, you're not even going to need the checklist. You can just, okay, yep, this fits our categories. Because I've looked at enough curriculum over the years now that I can pretty much tell you if it's good or not. So now we're going to move into a little bit about, I'm showing it is 1:45. So we're going to talk about creating a positive learning environment. How do we, so we've got this great curriculum now, how are we going to teach it? And hopefully most of the curriculum that you have has a lesson plan, but I've gone in and done some activities with especially after school groups. I might be teaching a curriculum on animal science, but I don't necessarily have a lesson plan drawn up for me. And so I'm creating a lesson. Another example of one that I've done is every year, when my son was a Clover Bud, every year the kids wanted to learn about horses. Horses are always big with that age group, with that 5 to 7-year-olds. Oh, everybody wants a horse. I keep trying to tell them, just come to my family farm and you'll learn that, no, you don't want a horse. But, so the Clover Bud leader every year asked me to go in and teach a lesson on horses. And so what I would do would be to take bits and pieces out of different 4-H curriculum, but I really needed to create a lesson plan of my own to do that. And so I would sit down and think about the lesson plan that I wanted to create. And so, you're going to have those times that you do that. And so, I want to help you as 4-H professionals to be able to do that. And so just to kind of give you An idea. So creating a lesson plan. You want to write out a specific topic. So the more specific you can make it, the easier it is to plan. It might not be just animal science. Maybe you're just talking about beef conformation that day. So here's my beef conformation. List the learning objectives. So this is where we're going to spend more time as we move forward, but you're going to be creating learning objectives. I want the participants to, and then you're going to, figure out what they want them. Identify the information that they need to know. So that is, if it's a more advanced topic, so say you're talking about vet science, and you want your kids to learn about vaccinations, about the importance of vaccinations. Well, part of the basic information that a young person might need to know is, what are the different types of, how do you give shots? So, sub-Q, in a vein, and so maybe you're gonna identify that information beforehand, and that might be a lesson you need to do. Jasmine, I just made a lesson plan on vaccinations. Fantastic. that seems to be one that is always a popular one to do. But you need, they might need to know how to give a shot. And so what you might have to do before you can teach that lesson on vaccinations is give them that information ahead of time. They may not know that there's different ways to give a shot. Decide how you want to deliver that message or deliver the information. It's really been found that students stop listening to lecture after about 10 minutes. So if you're planning on that being your main delivery mode, first of all, I'm going to tell you that you're not going to be popular with the kids or adults. I can't, even as a college student, I hated going to lectures. But I said before, they found that, and I just looked it up right before this session because I was like, I wonder what that is now. People's attention span is now shorter. Humans have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. That's a really scary thing when I think about it. And it's all due to this. Their research is out there showing, based on electronics, attention spans are getting shorter. And people are doing more and more how many of you can actually sit and watch a TV show without having this or your iPad or some kind of electronic device using it as well? And so, it's 8 seconds is what a person's attention span is. It was 12 seconds in 2000. The other piece that is really important to know about teaching, and one thing that I learned when I was going through my teaching program, is you really need to change your teaching style about every 7 to 12 minutes or 7 to 10 minutes. So maybe you do a lecture, maybe you're giving them background information for 7 to 10 minutes, and then you change and you're going to do some kind of hands-on activity. Or maybe you're going to have them watch a video at that point. You just want to make sure that you are changing about every 7 to 10 minutes. You're not going to be able to, obviously you're not going to be able to change every 8 seconds, but what you might want to be aware of is changing the tone of your voice, changing the context of what you're teaching. Maybe doing, not overusing hand gestures, but being able to grab their attention back. If you're just standing up there in front of them with your hands in front with a monotone voice, how many people are going to listen to this for more than 8 seconds? Probably not a lot. I can't even do that for what was that, like 5 seconds, and I couldn't even do that because it's just not it's not in my nature. Make sure that the materials that you're using are age appropriate. Part of that might be trying to, if you can find a guinea pig ahead of time, if you can find somebody to try out the activity. There's been times I've actually had my, people in my office try the activity, and if I know it's too hard for an adult, I know for sure I'm not going to be able to do it with a to a 7-year-old. So it might be that you have to readjust how you're doing it, or you might have to find a different activity. If you have access to some young kids, you might be able to do that activity with them. My poor son has been a guinea pig for me for most of his life. I always figured if he can do it, then anybody can do it, and so it's always good to be able to do that. He actually, when I was in Idaho, our STEM specialist was creating a Lego robotics program for 5 to 7-year-olds or 5 to 8-year-olds. It was a reading and robotics thing, and he needed to test it out. So in came my son one day, and he got to play, and he got to the book, The Gruffalo. He got to create little characters out of Legos and then use the computer to see if he could get those little guys to move. And, so if you've got access to kids, that's a great way to test out whether it's age appropriate or not. And then consider your evaluation or your assessment. What do you want to do an evaluation? You don't have to do an evaluation every time. I think it's good to do them on a regular basis. Even a teaching evaluation, part of that could just be, part of that can be, did everybody understand how to do the activity? Did the results come out? But what questions are you going to ask? And if everybody, I think most everybody, maybe not, and if you haven't, then there is access to those files, but I can't remember. Yes, this is a great leader training topic, how to create a lesson plan for leaders, because a lot of them do not have this understanding. I'm going to share this PowerPoint with all of and it's got lots of notes on it, so you guys can share this with them. But the evaluation, go back to that webinar about when I talked about Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. Really look at that level 1 and level 2. What are some questions that we can ask? So how do you write a learning objective? You might hear other terms for that, things like learning objectives, outcomes, terminal objectives, educational objectives, performance objectives, aims, competencies, etc. But we kind of mean the same thing. So these are really statements that describe what you expect the learner to achieve from the instruction. The point of learning objectives has really been around for a long time. Robert Mager was the one that has really been credited with launching this movement towards utilizing learning objectives. And what's really ironic is the title of his book added some confusion. He had a book, about what people looked at the title and concluded that the objectives referred to what the teachers would do as opposed to what the learner would do. And so, and this is, he printed the book in 1975 as a second edition with a different title. So it really, you have to look at that. He's written lots of books on that. But because they direct the attention to the student or the participants and the types of behaviors, that's why sometimes they're called behavior objectives. You're trying to get a certain behavior out of the kids or out of the students. So what is the difference between goals and objectives? Sometimes we hear that term really used interchangeably, but that is not correct. They are very different. Goals are broad, and sometimes they're difficult to measure. So that's how you kind of tell the difference between a goal and an objective, is goals tend to be more difficult to have a direct measure of them. It's important. Goals are extremely important because they help us look at the big and the important picture, the big picture of what we're learning. But, you still need to break it down. So here, it describes in broad terms what the learner's going to gain. So the example, participants will gain an appreciation for the role of the family medicine physician in the healthcare system. Now, most everybody's going to agree that that is a great goal. And so the learning objective is that statement that's specific and measurable. So it describes what the learner's going to know and what they're going to be able to do because they were involved in this learning activity. So here the example is students will list 3 characteristics that make the family medicine physician distinctive from other specialists in the healthcare system. So I think that that is, you know, if you can see the difference between those two, and that's really what we need to think about. And, you know, as we're working with our young people, I'm even thinking of our 4-Hers as they're working on their record books or their portfolios. You know, we always say, what are 3 goals that you have for this? We maybe need to think about, you know, what are 3 objectives that you want to gain, or, you know, what are your goals, and then what is an objective from that? So we can help them to be able to measure whether they learned that or not. They may not be able to do it exactly, but, you know, it's something we can think about. So there are really 3 parts to an ideal learning objective. One is a measurable verb. So here the students will list. So list is that verb. The important condition, if any, in which the performance will occur, they will list 3 characteristics, and then the criteria for an acceptable performance. You know, so you can see that. Frequently, you're not going to necessarily see the criteria or the condition that are specified if they're obvious. Sometimes adding the condition or that criteria can add a clarity to that. So the purpose of the objective. So by knowing where you intend to go, you increase the chance that you and the learner are going to end up there. I think that that's really important. If we don't know where we're going, it's hard to get somebody to the end. It guides you, guides the teacher relative to the planning of instruction, the delivery of the instruction, and then how to evaluate. It guides our learner, helps them to focus and to set their priorities, and then allows for you to be able to analyze the level of teaching and the level of learning. Other things that it does, it also shows our colleagues and our students what we value. You know, I think that that's really important. You know, it shows people what our program values or what that individual values. It's a guide for the learner related to self-assessment. Gives us a basis for analyzing the level of cognitive knowledge that we're expecting from the learner. It makes our teaching more focused and organized. You know, when I was out of college and just starting in this career, if I didn't sit down and think about what I wanted to teach, has anybody ever had that kind of experience where you didn't think about it, you just went in and did it, and it was the most chaotic, most unorganized mess I've ever been in? We talk about, you know, 4-H is an out-of-school activity, but we need to be intentional about the learning that happens. We want it to be organized chaos. So, you know, we know that things are happening, and they just, you know, and so I think that that's really critical. If I don't sit down and think about what I'm going to teach, then my focus and my organization is completely out. And that's one of the reasons why I think PowerPoint came into play, because, you know, you can sit down and think about this. It also provides a model so that students can write their own objectives, and what that does is also helps them to develop that lifelong learning skill of setting the objectives. You know, what is it that you want to gain from this experience? So the magic triangle. This triangle really represents the relationship between learning objectives, learning activities, and the evaluation. When these 3 components are congruent, then the teaching and learning is also enhanced, hence the magic triangle. When they're not congruent, when they're not, you know, all in line, and then the students become discouraged, they become unhappy, and they really make the assumption that the objectives cannot be trusted, and then they stop paying attention to those learning objectives. So just when the learning activities are those things that the student does to learn, and hopefully the learning activities are planned by the instructor, whether it be a 4-H volunteer, you, or a teacher. For an example, listening to a lecture would be a learning activity, as would engaging in a small group discussion that's led by a facilitator, making rounds with a clinician if you're in a medical field. The evaluation is usually thought of as the test, but evaluation can also be an assignment that's graded. For us, a good evaluation for us is especially with a project, would be the portfolio or the record book. It's just a way to measure the student's accomplishment of that learning objective. Any questions about that so far? Okay, everybody's pretty quiet, so I'm going to examples of some learning objectives. So these are actual examples of 4-H learning objectives. So things: identify life skills developed by 4-H members. That one's pretty broad, but still an example. Discuss methods to help youth identify to develop life skills. Explore examples of activities to assist youth with life skill development. Differentiate between service learning and community service. So that might be, maybe there's a lesson plan where you're talking to the young people about service, and you really explain the difference between service learning and community service. And if for this group, if you're not aware of the difference between those two, you need to go look it up because there's a big difference between service learning and community service. And we really want our young people in 4-H to really do more service learning than community service, just so that there is some learning involved. And then follow the steps to implement a positive service learning project. So then we might have 4-H project work, some learning objectives that they keep and understand records, make informed judgments and explain the reasoning behind those judgments. That could be a judging contest if you've got a judging contest. So you can see all of those examples. Those are just some. Then there are good verbs that really should be used when creating learning objectives. So if you want to measure knowledge gained, you use terms like define, memorize, list, recall, repeat, relate, name. If you want to know if they actually comprehended what they learned, then things like restate, discuss, describe, identify, locate, report, you can see all of those different terms. One of the things that I like about learning objectives too is if you sit down in the beginning and think about your learning objectives, think about your evaluation piece, that's going to help to build the activity. If you want somebody to be able to identify 5 out of 10 methods of or 5 out of 10 important vaccines to give to a bee, to give to their steer, then you need to sit down and think. You have to make sure in your activity that you are giving them at least 10. Because sometimes, and this was one that I really have, I push a lot because, and I like, even with my son in school, I will question teachers. So what was the purpose of this lesson? Did they meet that purpose? Because if it shows, if it looks like they've met it, but yet the teacher had something completely different and didn't give them the information that they needed, then I'm going to question it. And so, as a parent even in a 4-H program, I'm going to question, well, if you wanted them to learn 5 out of 10, you needed to give them all 10. So effective learning objectives, they're consistent with the goals of the curriculum. They're clearly stated. I think that that's important. They're clearly measurable. That's one thing. I like to have somebody else look at something that I'm creating at times and say, okay, so how can I measure that? And see if they can clearly tell me how I'm going to measure that objective. So many times, you know, I've been in committees and I've been on programs, and we create all of this information, you know, we create all these lesson plans, and I'm sitting here going, well, how are we going to measure if they learned that or not? And if it makes it difficult, if it's a difficult process, then, you know, you can't do that. Is it realistic and doable? You know, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of one right now. Sorry, my brain just kind of shut off on that one. Is it the appropriate level for a learner? We need, again, looking at what is developmentally appropriate. Is it realistic that we're going to have a 5 to 7 year old or a 5 to 8 year old be able to show us 3 ways to give a shot? Probably not. Is it realistic that we're even going to have a 9 and 10 year old be able to show us 3 ways to give a shot? That's getting kind of, you know, yes, you will have some that will be able to do it in a heartbeat. You will have some that will have no idea. So you need to, you know, that's probably as you're moving forward, but maybe they can show us 1 way. Pretty easy to be able to show how to give a subcutaneous shot. So looking at that, may not be able to show all 3, but maybe 1 of the 3. And then, is it worthy? Is it important stuff? The characteristics of a effective objective, as you know, as shown here on this PowerPoint, provide us that criteria to be able to evaluate the objectives that you construct. So I just want to take a minute and practice. And I know that this is a little difficult to do, but I'm going to give everybody about 5 or not, or not, probably don't even need that. I'm going to put it back, but I want you to try writing 1 learning objective for a 4-H day camp on sewing that you're going to be teaching. So I'm going to go back to the verbs. I'm going to leave the verbs up, and when you come up with that learning objective, if you can type it in the chat box, that would be fantastic. I just want everybody to have a chance to practice this. Okay, so Dixie's was memorize and discuss the parts of a sewing machine. You could do that at camp. It may be a beginning sewing camp. And so, you know, they would memorize and discuss the parts of the sewing machine. Okay? Youth would identify. So, can we get, you know, as we're looking at this, even more specific? I mean, these are good. These are great ones, but could we even get more specific? Youth will be able to identify, members will be able to identify simple stitches to complete a shirt with an inset sleeve. Great. You know, think about how you're going to measure it too. Okay, list and review 5 different sewing tools. Great. That's a good one. You can measure that. You know, just having them tell you what those 5 different. Students will be able to explain and demonstrate proper care and cleaning of a sewing machine. Fantastic. Ah, wonderful. You guys are getting it. Hopefully it's not super new information, but okay. Anybody else have, I'll give you a couple more minutes. Okay. Great. Youth will be able to demonstrate how to prepare a sewing machine, 4 types of stitches useful on for sewing on buttons. I'm coming to your guys' sewing camps, just by the way. I need to learn all of these things. My husband gives me a hard time because I have a sewing machine. He bought me a sewing machine and I can make a straight stitch. That's about it. Can't use it to sew on a button. I can sew on a button by hand, but can't do it with a sewing machine. I did not take 4-H sewing, which they give me a hard time about. Okay, great job. So I've got another, some of the other documents that I want to share with you. Okay. So, sorry, I'm just, no problem, Molly. We were just talking about learning or writing learning objectives. And so I have got, I think, yes. So one piece that I'm going to share with everybody is a document that was created by Purdue, and I just think that this is a good way to put in, and these are volunteer toolkits for success, but this is what I like about it is it's just a good way to how to do a lesson plan. So here's the learning objectives for it. Here's the supplies and resources that they would need for that. Any references. So what that would be that could be part of, what your materials that you need, the background information, how long it's going to take you. Sorry, I'm just kind of going through this. And then instructor notes. I don't know if I don't think the PowerPoint presentation is on here, but if you ever wanted to teach this, you could go back and look at it. But it gives you that instructor notes. Is sometimes as you are looking at presenting, there are times you might want to write out what you're going to say. I will be perfectly honest with you, and I will show you guys on this one, not so much on this one, the one that we just finished. I do have a lot of, you can see I have a lot of instructor notes on the bottom of this PowerPoint because it's a topic, I mean, I know a lot about it, but it's one that I haven't done for a long time. And so I do write out what I want to say a lot of times. And I think that it doesn't hurt to do that. Here in this lesson, these are the learning objectives. And then it goes through, I'm going to, what's in there isn't necessarily, but I wanted to show you something that they have done in this. So after the, here's the lesson, the life skill development quiz. So they've actually created a quiz to help show if the young person has learned this skill. You don't always have to do a quiz. You could do something else. One thing that could be fun to do if you wanted to measure learning is, and I need to look to see if I still have this. I used to have a template on how to create a Jeopardy game, or on creating a Jeopardy game. You could input your own questions and your own answers, and it put it into the system, and it came out like a Jeopardy board game. I would do that a lot of times, and I've got to look to see if I still have it. And the person that created it, of course, is long gone from Extension. But, that's one way to measure learning. And it makes it fun for kids. Great learning, great hands-on, and it makes it competitive, which we all know kids like competitive sometimes. But again, they've created this quiz to see if they learned for this lesson plan. This is just one lesson plan that they have put together in a series. in a series of curriculum. So you could, I'm going to share this with you so you can kind of see how Purdue's put that together. And then let's see, I think, and then I just got some handouts from National 4-H Council about the different aspects of what we are, what we're talking about, what's important, like targeting life skills, integrating the mission mandates, inclusivity. I think that all of those are really important. And so I'll be sharing all of those with you as well as these PowerPoints. I'll keep my notes in there, and so just so everybody can have those. Again, these are topics that you can take to your volunteers and share with your volunteers. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 2-hour session, but it could be, a few minutes, 20 minutes on how to create a lesson plan and how to write learning objectives. Because I think probably that's where we're falling short and I was asking the question the other day to all of the program leaders in the West about what states, who else is having issues with volunteers not using curriculum, research-based 4-H curriculum. And a lot of states are not. One of the things I'm going to be looking at, California has a set of standards that if you're going to do a project and you're going to do lessons, here's what it needs to meet. And part of that, is making sure it's ingrained in positive youth development. But we're not there yet. The reason I say that is because we need to do a lot of training with our volunteers about, what it means for positive youth development. What does it mean for, the risk management, all of those different components that we look at. But that's something we might be able to get to in a couple of years. To be able to not feel the need that, we need to have some kind of research-based curriculum. As long, if our volunteers have that ingrained understanding. And so that's all I've got on those two topics. Do you guys have any questions about that? About those? Okay. Okay, that could be one. Do you know if Cornell? Typically, Cornell is pretty good. If you've got something that you want to look at, feel free to send it to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm always looking for new stuff too. I get lots and lots of questions from people looking for curriculum, and I'm always out looking for new stuff. And if you've got something you want me to review, great. I can always. The nice thing is there's enough. I can call and say, hey, where did this come from? How did you create it? Yeah, and I'll look at that, Tricia, and see if that, I haven't looked at that one. This one was created specifically by somebody at University of Arizona that worked in 4-H, and so it actually has a clover on it. And so, but I'm glad to see that as well. Because, just finding those fun games sometimes is a great evaluation tool. I used to do that when I'd go in and teach in college classes about 4-H and about youth development and volunteerism and those things. I used to use a game every time because they don't want to sit up and listen to me lecture. So let's use a fun teaching method to do that. Okay, so if you found the perfect 4-H curriculum, and I want all the 4-H kids to have the same project book for, say, Market Hogs, it depends on the state. Many states, every kid pays for their own curriculum. Some counties so they charge a $20 fee, and that includes all of your project materials for up to 5 projects. It just depends on how you want to do that in your county. There's no reason to say that kids shouldn't be paying for their project materials. I mean, I know that sounds funny, but it just, it's part of what, or if your county has money to be able to pay for that, then they do. It just seems strange to me because in most states that I've ever worked in, that's just part of joining 4-H. You may have a $5 enrollment fee, and then you have to pay for your project materials on top of that. So I guess, it's just up to the individual counties, how you want to structure that. Have you ever had, let's see, have you ever had to have evaluations children? I do evaluations all the time after workshops. And you can do, I've never done it with parents and children, but usually I'll do one with children. But you could do that. And if you go back, to that lesson plan or that orientation session on evaluation, and Jasmine, I'm not sure if you were on board or you might have been so new that it was kind of like, I'm not really understanding it. I shared some different examples of evaluations, and it works really, those tend to be simple. They were geared more towards older, but we can, if you ever need help creating an evaluation, feel free, or a workshop, just knowing, how it went over, feel free to get a hold of me. I've done that many times. Yeah. And I did just review some stuff for Tricia, that they had worked on in Clark County, gave some suggestions. I'm always, in fact, I just reviewed some stuff for Washington on biosecurity. And, it's going to be some online resources in biosecurity that, they're going to be adopting and hopefully we'll be able to use. And, it just depends. So the other piece, just so everybody, I'm always, like I said, I'm always out looking for stuff. I just found out the other day there's some new animal science lesson plans that are out of Idaho that actually started when I was there. It was one of the projects that I started, but then just left and said, have fun, do this. And the first level is actually now available, and I'm going to be pulling that together and sending that out to everybody. It's and I'm not sure how many lesson plans I actually have. I haven't looked at that, but there's some great resource materials, a resource book from books from Ohio State, like might be on market or might be on swine or it might be on beef. And they don't have lesson plans that go along with it. They're great resource materials for our volunteers and our youth, but there wasn't really any way to teach it. And so we were trying to find a way that new volunteers could just take that resource material and have the lesson plans to go along with it. And they've got the first set done. And so I'm going to share that with everybody. So, we've got some animal science stuff, and then looking at some of those other projects. I'm trying to find what I can find and things that are reasonable. So, all right. Any other questions? We're moving forward. I'm excited about. I'm excited that people are starting to ask more and more questions about, hey, where do I find project materials for this, or where do I find it for that? And that's what I want. So if there aren't any questions, there's about 7 minutes left, but everybody can get back to everything else that they're doing for their day. And I've had a conflict come up for the Thursday session. And I'm not quite sure if I'm 100% ready to move forward with the financial stuff. So just so everybody knows, Thursday's session right now is probably going to be not happen. I'm working on, thank you, Sheriff, for attending while on vacation. Hopefully you're enjoying yourself. But just so you know, Thursday, and I'm going to send an email out about this because I have had that conflict and I really need to be at the meeting that came up. And so, but I'm going to be working on that and probably do that session in March or so. after February gets over. So thank you. Have a great rest of the weekend. Oh, yes, Marissa, call my office you can call my office or call my cell phone. I'm in, so you can call me right now. So about Bighorn tickets. Yes, and if anybody else needs Bighorn tickets, I still have them. And please come. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a booth up. And I ordered a whole bunch of 4-H swag, like pencils and fans and airplanes, and I don't even know. So should be fun.